Long before I ever saw him, the man at the glass, I had already learned how easy it is to disappear. Not in the dramatic movie scene kind of way, but in the real-world sense. When people stop asking how you're doing, when you stop answering texts, when your name doesn't come up anymore. That's what happened after I dropped out of nursing school. I was 25, burned out, broke, and tired of pretending I was okay. My parents said they understood, but I could hear the disappointment behind every pause. I moved out of my apartment, crashed in a friend's guest room, and started working night shifts at the Pinecrest Mini Mart, a cramped little store tucked between a dead laundromat and a boarded-up thrift shop on Clover Hill Road in Montpelier. I took the job because I needed something quiet, simple, out of the way. Brian, the manager, was easy enough to deal with. He was the kind of guy who loved to coast, clocked in, scrolled through sports scores, and counted the minutes till close. As long as no one gets stabbed, he liked to joke. I call it a successful shift. That Thursday night in December started like most others. Vermont had been buried under snow for 3 straight days. Cars were hushed under thick white blankets, and the sidewalks were deserted. The kind of stillness that makes sound feel heavier. I was restocking the gum and chapstick racks behind the counter, half listening to a podcast in one ear when I heard the first bang. Not a knock. A bang. I turned and saw a man at the glass door. Tall, thin, gaunt in a way that didn't look right. He was wearing a massive black coat like something a child might borrow from an older brother. No gloves, shoes soaked through. He looked straight at me and hit the door again, hard. Let me in. Just need something to eat, come on. His voice was rough, like it had been scraped thin. Brian leaned out from the back room holding a clipboard. Ignore it, he said, annoyed. We're closed. He looks frozen, I said. We've got sandwiches, right? We could... No. He gets something, then the next guy wants something. And the next. I'm not running a soup kitchen, Mara. I didn't like it, but I didn't argue. The man kept pounding for maybe 30 more seconds, then stopped. He just stood there staring in, eyes locked with mine, not moving. His breath fogged the glass in slow, even circles. Then I blinked. 10 seconds, maybe less. He was gone. I stepped out from behind the counter, opened the door cautiously, and looked around. The snow in the parking lot was clean. No footprints. No tire tracks. Just white. I told Brian, but he waved me off. Had to leave somehow. Probably just took off. People like that don't exactly float. I couldn't explain it. I wasn't scared yet. Just unnerved. Like something didn't add up. Like I'd missed a key detail. I spent the last 15 minutes of the shift jumpy, checking the glass door, double-checking the time, replaying the man's face in my mind. After we locked up, Brian told me to take out the trash before I left. I bundled up and dragged the bag to the back alley. That's when I saw the side access door, the one to the storage room, cracked open. I froze. That door was supposed to stay locked. Always. I couldn't remember either of us opening it that night. I dropped the trash bag. Back inside, I flipped the deadbolt on the front door and told Brian what I saw. He barely looked up. Door probably didn't latch right. Wind can mess with it. The snow's not blowing sideways, Brian. That door opened from the inside. He just shrugged. I didn't argue anymore. I sat behind the counter until midnight, texting a friend just so someone would know I was still alive. When I got home that night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the TV on mute and scrolled through my local community board online. No real news about what I'd seen, but there was something. A post with a blurry photo. Woman followed home from Clover Hill gas station. Man in oversized coat seen hiding by dumpsters. Police notified. My stomach dropped. I checked the timestamp, just 2 days earlier. I kept thinking about that man's eyes. Not hungry, not desperate, just fixed. Watching. The next morning, I thought about quitting. I even drafted the email. But I needed the money. One more shift, I told myself. Just one. It was quiet again that Friday. Snow had turned to ice, and the sidewalks were slick and empty. Around 9 p.m., a woman came in with a cup of gas station coffee and asked if she could post a flyer. Her name was Claire. Her hands shook a little as she taped it up on the community board. "That's my brother," she said. "Missing 2 weeks now. His name's Eli. He talks to himself sometimes, gets confused, but he's not dangerous, just lost." I looked at the photo. It wasn't the same coat, but it was the same man. I was sure of it. The eyes, that hollow, distant look. "I think I saw him," I told her. Her face lit up. "When?" "Last night, around closing, he was outside. I wasn't sure it was him until now." She pulled out her phone. "Can you describe what he said? Anything?" I hesitated. He asked for food, banged on the glass, but something felt wrong. Like he wasn't asking me, he was testing me. Her face fell. "I should have opened the door," I said. She shook her head. "You did what you thought was right." I gave her my number. She thanked me and left. But something changed in me after that. I started noticing things. Small things. The backlight near the alley that flickered every time I passed. The footsteps on the roof during storms. A box of canned goods that moved 3 inches overnight. Brian never noticed, but I did. A week later, Brian transferred to another store across town. Said it was closer to home. "I'll be fine here," I told him. "You're sure?" "I need the hours." He handed me the keys. "Don't leave the front unlocked. That's rule number 1. That Saturday, I opened alone. A slow day. A few locals came by, mostly regulars, but around 8:30 p.m., I heard something at the back door. Not a knock. A scrape. Then a thud. I froze, grabbed the flashlight we kept under the counter, and went to the storage room. The back door was locked, thank God, but a smear of something dark was on the handle, not blood, maybe grease, maybe dirt. But the smell, rotten, like wet laundry and sour meat. I called the police. They came, took a look, and left within 10 minutes. "Could be raccoons," one officer said. I knew it wasn't. I started locking the doors an hour early after that. Company policy be damned. I quit 2 days later, filed it as personal reasons. I still drive past the Pinecrest Mini-Mart sometimes just to see. It's still there, lights flickering, front windows dark after 10. I haven't seen him again. Not really, but I keep thinking about that night, how he banged on the door, not asking, daring, and how the snow didn't have any footprints, like he came out of nowhere, or never left. I still don't know if Eli ever made it home. Maybe he wandered into the woods. Maybe he found another door. But what I do know is this. Some people aren't looking for food. They're looking to see who opens the door. Trust your instincts, especially when something feels off. Not every cry for help is innocent, and not every person outside in the cold is looking for warmth. In a world that often teaches us to be kind, we must also learn to be careful. Sometimes survival means knowing when not to open the door. Growing up in Ash Grove, Missouri, I believed our little town was immune to anything truly terrible. My parents owned Hollow Pines General, a small corner store off Briarwood Street. It was the kind of place where folks picked up lottery tickets and chatted about who got married or who needed their roof patched. The kind of place where everybody knew everybody, or at least pretended to. I was 10 that spring, just tall enough to reach the second shelf behind the checkout counter and just young enough to still believe the world was mostly good. My big sister Heather had just started working the register. She was 16, effortlessly cool, and always annoyed by me. But the kind of annoyed that still made sure I ate lunch and zipped my coat. I spent most afternoons at the store. My parents called it keeping me close, but I called it being part of the team. I'd pretend to be the manager from the back room, scribbling fake inventory notes on old receipts and talking to imaginary customers like I owned the place. But really, I was watching Nate. Nate Ellison was our clerk. 28, ex-Marine, with kind eyes and a crooked smile. He wasn't technically family, but it didn't matter. In Ash Grove, people like Nate were closer than blood. He worked full-time, stocked shelves, manned the register, and fixed the fridge every time it started buzzing too loud. He never talked about the war unless you asked, and even then he'd keep it light, joking about bad food and loud sergeants. But every now and then, when he thought no one was looking, I'd catch him standing really still, like he was listening for something the rest of us couldn't hear. That night, Sunday, April 9th, 2006, it was quiet. Spring break weekend meant the store was slow, just a few stragglers coming in for sodas or microwavable dinners. Mom had gone home early with a migraine, and Dad was working late at the feed store, so it was just me, Heather, and Nate. I was restocking plastic forks from a box half my height when I heard it. A loud pop, sharp and sudden, like someone had slammed a book shut hard. I dropped the forks. Then came the scream. Heather. I ran to the front. My feet felt stuck to the linoleum, but I moved anyway. I peeked around the candy rack and saw Nate, standing, but not right. His hand was pressed to his chest, and there was red blooming fast under his shirt. Heather was behind the counter, her face pale and wet with tears. A man stood at the register. I couldn't see his face. Hoodie pulled tight, gloved hands, one holding a pistol, one reaching across the counter. "Open the damn drawer, now!" he yelled. Heather fumbled with the register, sobbing. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My body wouldn't let me. Nate tried to say something, I think. His lips moved. Then he collapsed, like someone pulled the bones out of him. The man didn't even flinch. Grabbed the cash and ran. He never looked at me, but I saw him. Every detail I could remember, I held onto it like it was a photograph I wasn't allowed to forget. The police arrived 10 minutes later. Not bad for Ash Grove, but by then, everything was over. Nate was gone. The rest of that night was a blur of uniforms and tape. My parents showed up. My mom wouldn't let go of me. My dad held Heather like she was about to vanish. They closed the store for 2 weeks. That was the longest it had ever stayed shut, even longer than when the roof collapsed during the blizzard of '99. The front windows were boarded up, and a sign was taped to the door, closed until further notice. Thank you for understanding. But no one really understood. Heather stopped working at the store. She wouldn't even walk past it. At night, I'd hear her crying through the bedroom wall, muffled by pillows, trying not to let anyone hear. I didn't cry at first. I felt something different. A quiet, heavy ache, like I'd let something break and now I couldn't fix it, because I hadn't screamed. I hadn't run for help. I hadn't even moved. I just hid. I kept telling myself that maybe if I'd shouted, maybe Nate would have held on. Maybe the man would have panicked and run, but maybe not. I started having nightmares, not about the gun or the blood, but about that exact moment, frozen behind the candy rack, seeing Heather cry and Nate stumble and being invisible. Weeks passed, then months. They caught the man in July. He was arrested for a different robbery a few towns over. During questioning, he confessed. He said the store looked empty. Thought he could get in and out without a fight. He got the money, but he took more than that. Nate's funeral was small. His parents lived out of state, and most of the town came to pay respects. I remember sitting next to Heather holding her hand, or maybe she was holding mine, and wondering if anyone else was feeling what I was. Guilt. The kind of guilt that doesn't come from doing something wrong, but from not doing anything at all. Eventually, life tried to move on. The store reopened. They installed a camera over the register and stopped staying open past 7. But it wasn't the same. I stopped playing in the back room. I didn't draw logos anymore, didn't pretend to run my own shop. The candy rack, the one I'd crouched behind, stayed untouched for months. I couldn't walk near it. Time does strange things to memory. Some parts blur, others stay sharp like broken glass. Now I'm 27. I work in retail in a bigger city, a few hours away. I've moved on paper at least. But every once in a while, I'll catch a smell, plastic and pine sol, or a sound, the chime of a door opening. And I'm back there. Back behind the candy rack, holding my breath. I still see Nate sometimes, in dreams mostly. He's always standing at the register, smiling like nothing happened. Sometimes he says my name. Sometimes he just nods, like he's letting me know he remembers too. Heather got married last year. She doesn't talk about that night anymore. I think she's tried to pack it away, like an old sweater you can't wear anymore but can't throw out either. But I still carry it, not because I want to, because part of me still wonders if Nate saw me. And if he did, what did he think of me in that moment? Did he forgive me for hiding? There's a moment, right before something terrible happens, where everything feels normal. I think about that a lot, because the last thing I remember before the gunshot was Nate telling me to grab more napkins for aisle 3. Something so simple, so forgettable. And then, nothing was simple again. I still go back to Ash Grove sometimes. The store's under new management. The name's the same, the paint's different. But the windows feel smaller, the lights dimmer. I never go inside. I just sit in my car across the street, engine off, and watch the front door. Some part of me, I think, is still waiting to go back inside and hear Nate's voice. But I know better. Because that night didn't just end a life. It ended the version of myself that believed small towns were safe just because they were small. It taught me that no place, no matter how familiar, is ever truly safe from sudden change. It taught me that being a witness carries weight. We don't always get to choose how we respond in moments of fear, but we do choose what we carry afterward. Silence doesn't mean failure, and freezing doesn't mean you didn't care. Sometimes surviving is the only thing you could have done, and remembering is how you honor what was lost. It was early fall in Athens, Georgia, and the air still held onto the thick edge of summer even though the leaves had started to crisp at the edges. I'd just turned 19 and moved into my first apartment near campus, a quiet, one-bedroom, just a few blocks off the university loop. My mother had cried when she dropped me off, her arms too tight around my shoulders, reminding me to always lock the doors and never walk alone at night. She was an on-call nurse and had raised me by herself since I was 4. Overprotective didn't even begin to cover it, but I never faulted her for it. When it's just the two of you against the world, the stakes always feel higher. My days settled into a cautious rhythm. Classes in the morning, library in the afternoons, microwave dinners at night. I walked everywhere, earbuds in one ear only, just like Mom told me. My apartment was small but clean, with a twin bed in the corner and a little 2-seater couch I found on Facebook Marketplace. I kept it neat, always tidy. Like if I controlled the clutter, maybe I could control the rest of the chaos too. The Redwood Stop Shop was 2 blocks from me, one of those local convenience stores that smelled like pine sol and cheap incense. I liked it because it was never crowded, and the clerk was usually too busy watching basketball reruns to notice me come or go. It was my kind of place. Quiet, unassuming. That Tuesday in October, the sun dipped low before dinner and I realized I was out of eggs and Zyrtec. My nose had been itching all day and the thought of taking a longer walk to CVS didn't appeal. I grabbed my keys, slipped into my hoodie and started toward Redwood. The parking lot was mostly empty except for an old red Dodge truck with a dented door. I'd seen it the day before but didn't think much of it. This was a college town, old cars, half-empty lots, it was nothing. I stepped inside, the familiar chime above the door echoing behind me. The air was stale, humming from the overhead fluorescents. I kept my head down, grabbed a half-dozen eggs and a box of allergy meds, then started for the front. I didn't see him until I heard him. "You look like you've had a long day," he said. I turned, slowly. He stood by the cooler, maybe late 30s, pale baseball cap, nondescript t-shirt, scruffy beard. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah," I said lightly. "You could say that." "Live nearby?" he asked, reaching for a Coke behind me. Something about the ease in his voice felt too smooth. Not creepy exactly, but overly casual, practiced. "Kinda," I said, trying to stay neutral. He nodded. "Thought I recognized you. Last Thursday, right? You had on a green hoodie. You dropped your receipt outside, picked it up real gentle. I remember thinking that was sweet. My fingers gripped the egg carton a little tighter. My pulse stumbled. I didn't remember seeing him before, at all. My mind started running through every visit to this store. Had he been behind me in line? Outside in the parking lot? Watching from his truck? I forced a smile. Maybe. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice like we were old friends sharing something secret. I noticed your hands shake a little. You okay, sweetheart? Anxiety? My mouth dried out. I felt my breath stutter, but I kept my smile stitched in place. Just in a rush, I said. My boyfriend's waiting on me. His expression didn't change. In fact, he smiled wider. Oh, really? Didn't see anyone outside? You sure you're not just saying that to scare me off? Then, he winked. That did it. I turned without another word and walked straight to the counter, nodding quickly to the cashier and fumbling for exact change. My heart beat like a drum in my ears. I didn't look back. Not once. The moment I was outside, I didn't run. I couldn't. Running meant fear. Fear drew attention. I crossed the lot and ducked into the alley behind the store, cutting through an overgrown patch of grass and around the back of the apartment complex. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop until I crouched behind the stairs to my unit hidden in the shadows. I waited. 3 minutes passed, then 5, and then I saw it. The red Dodge truck rolled down the road past the complex. Slowly, driver's window down. His face partially visible. He wasn't looking for traffic. He was looking for someone. He didn't see me. I stayed crouched until he was gone. When I got inside, I locked the door. Then I slid my desk chair under the knob, just like Mom taught me. The next morning, I called my mom and told her everything. She was quiet at first. Then came the panic. Jenna, baby, file a report. Now. I don't even know what I'd report, I whispered. He didn't touch me, didn't threaten me. But he knew things, and she snapped. That's enough, you don't wait until it gets worse. So I did. I went to the campus security office, gave a description, told them about the truck, what he said, how he knew details. They were polite but non-committal. No license plate, no name, no actual crime. They said they'd keep an eye out, but their eyes were already stretched thin. For the next few weeks, I avoided Redwood, took the longer walk to CVS. I started wearing a hat, changed my hoodie, switched my tote bag. I installed a lock bar on the door, got a little pepper spray keychain and practiced holding it between my knuckles, like the safety videos say. I kept to myself more, walked with purpose, made fake phone calls to imaginary people, anything to make myself look less like a target. But every night before bed, I still peeked through the blinds, just to check, just in case. It was a Friday night about a month later when I saw it again. Same red truck. Parked across the street from the 24-hour laundromat. No movement inside. Just parked. I told myself it could be someone else. A similar truck. Maybe someone doing laundry late. But my stomach twisted itself into a knot. I didn't sleep well that night. The next day, I bought a door camera and installed it myself with a rented drill. I set up motion alerts. I even talked to the landlord about better lighting in the lot. He shrugged and said, "College town. People come and go." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I became more careful, more aware, more closed off. The truck never came back, or if it did, I never saw it again. But that didn't matter. The damage was done. There are moments that change you, even if no one else sees it. That man, he didn't touch me, didn't threaten me, but he found a way in, into my head, into my routines, into the parts of me that used to feel safe. He made me question everything, the clothes I wore, the way I walked, the things I carried, even the order in which I checked out of a store. People say, well, nothing happened, and they mean it as comfort. But something did. He made me smaller, cautious, He made me rewire my instincts. He made me second-guess the way I smiled at strangers. He made me hide my damn receipts. The worst part? I still think about his voice, the ease of it, the confidence, like he already knew I'd never say anything, like he'd done it before. Maybe he has, maybe he will again, but not to me, not anymore. Not all threats scream when they come. Some whisper, some smile, and the most dangerous ones are the ones who don't have to touch you to change everything. Trust your gut, guard your routine, and never ignore the feeling that something isn't right. Because sometimes protecting yourself doesn't mean fighting back. It means getting away while you still can. When you're 8 months pregnant, alone, and trying to outrun your past, the smallest town can start to feel like a sanctuary. That's what I was banking on when I moved to Meridian, Idaho. Quiet skies, clean streets, and nobody who knew my name. After years as a social worker in Boise, and a long, exhausting relationship that hollowed me out 1 year at a time, I needed distance. Not just from my ex, but from everything that used to feel like my life. I didn't have family nearby, just a small savings account, a beat-up Honda Civic, and a baby on the way. I found a 1-bedroom rental on the edge of town, right near a stretch of road that blurred into woods. The place smelled like paint and dust, but it had good locks, a fenced yard, and a quietness I hadn't heard in years. That quiet mattered more than I could explain. The nights were the hardest. That's when the weight of everything sank in. How I was doing this alone. How this baby would be mine to raise without help. How my phone didn't ring anymore unless it was a robocall or a reminder from the OB's office. Still, I kept my routine simple. Small goals. Eat well. Walk when I could. Breathe. Don't cry every day. That Sunday was supposed to be like any other. May 7th. Dusk was just beginning to settle in when I realized I was out of milk, bread, and something salty, crackers preferably. My ankles were sore and my back ached like hell, but I told myself it'd be a quick trip. 10 minutes there and back. No big deal. Hollow Creek Mart was barely 5 minutes down the road. One of those sleepy little convenience stores with a dusty freezer and flickering lights that gave the whole place a yellow cast. I'd been there 3 or 4 times. Never a crowd, never trouble. That was the appeal. Until it wasn't. It was clear and cool when I pulled into the lot. The sun hadn't fully dipped yet and the air smelled like warm dirt and pine needles. There were only 2 other cars, one near the side and the other right across from me, a Navy pickup with faded paint and Idaho plates. The man inside didn't move. He didn't reach for a cigarette or look at a phone, just sat with the engine off and his windows cracked. Watching. I didn't stare long. Didn't want to assume anything. I told myself to be rational. I was hormonal, exhausted, and overly sensitive. I was also alone and visibly pregnant. That's the part men always seem to notice, even when they say they don't. Inside, the store was dead quiet except for the soft hum of the freezers. The cashier, same kid as last time, didn't even glance up. I moved slow, back aching more than usual, and grabbed what I needed. Milk, bread, crackers. I added a cold bottle of water and made my way toward the front. That's when the bell above the door chimed again. It was the man from the truck. He walked in slow, didn't look around, didn't speak to the cashier. He didn't grab a basket, just started wandering the aisles. Never in mine, never next to me, but close enough. Always close, always watching. I caught him in the reflection of the glass freezer door as I bent to get a loaf of bread. His eyes didn't move, just stared. He wasn't shopping, he was waiting. I paid quickly, hands shaking as I counted out the bills. The cashier still didn't look up. I wanted to scream at him to notice, just see me. But I couldn't make a scene. That was how I'd always survived. Stay quiet, stay small, don't make it worse. As I pushed the door open and stepped outside, I clocked his truck again. He'd moved it. It was now parked 1 row closer. My breath caught. I gripped my keys like a weapon, One threaded through my fingers like I'd learned years ago in a self-defense workshop that felt more like a bandage than a solution. I waddled with purpose toward my car, not fast. Too fast and I'd draw attention. Just steady. Calm. Inside, I locked the doors the moment I sat down and started the engine. I backed out quick, didn't even check the mirror before I turned. The truck stayed still. I exhaled. I pulled onto the main road, heart still racing, and made it 2 blocks before I checked the rear view. He was behind me, far enough to seem casual, not close enough to prove anything. But I knew. No headlights. I turned left instead of right, heading into a neighborhood I didn't recognize, streets curving into cul-de-sacs and dead ends. Each turn was another test. Would he follow? Would he lose interest? He followed. 2 cars behind, lights on now, but never signaling. Always distant. Always there. I knew the difference between coincidence and choice. This was no accident. Every block felt tighter, my grip on the steering wheel white-knuckled and slick with sweat. My belly pressed against the seatbelt. The baby squirmed like it could feel my pulse. Then I remembered something. A neighbor had mentioned a 24-hour gas station by the I-84 ramp. Bright lights, working cameras, and a night guard who didn't put up with nonsense. It was 10 minutes out of the way. Maybe more. But it was the only place I could think of that didn't feel like a trap. I made for it like it was sanctuary. When I turned onto the final stretch of road, he was still behind me. 2 car lengths now. Closer. The lot was lit like a stadium when I pulled in. I parked near the pumps, got out like I was checking my tire, hoping to look busy but not scared. The truck rolled by behind me. Slow. Real slow. Then it kept going. Didn't stop, didn't turn, just left. A tall man in a vest came out from the station entrance, saw me standing there, wide-eyed and out of breath. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked, already halfway to me. I nodded, but I didn't really mean it. I filed a report the next morning, drove down to the station myself. Photos of the truck burned into my mind, though I couldn't remember a single digit on the plate. The clerk at Hollow Creek didn't remember him. Said he might have come in, might not. No purchase, no clear footage. Cameras old and glitchy. There was nothing to go on. That's what they told me gently, like I should be relieved it didn't go further. But here's the thing. It did go far enough. That night changed me. I stopped shopping after dark. I parked closer to doors. I kept my gas tank above half and never ignored my instincts. I started using my dash cam. I told my story to other women. I made sure my daughter, when she came, would grow up learning what to look for, how to move, how to listen when your gut speaks loud. I never saw him again, but I still see him. In every quiet aisle, in every silent parking lot, in every rear-view mirror when the night gets too quiet. Because sometimes being hunted doesn't start with footsteps. It starts with a look, a pause, a silence that presses too close. And you never unfeel it. Real danger doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rides behind you, lights off, just far enough to question your own fear. Trust the fear anyway. It's not paranoia. It's protection. And sometimes, the difference between a warning and a wound is how quickly you listen to your instincts. You don't choose the graveyard shift at a gas station diner because life's going great. You pick it because the bills don't stop when college does. Because you're 22, barely scraping by in a rental with a furnace that clicks but never fully heats. Because 50 cents more an hour for working while the rest of the town sleeps sounds like a good enough deal, when the alternative is being awake in your own head. The Hillside Express Mart sat just off North Fern Road in Butte, Montana. A squat little building with buzz-sick lights, always smelling like freezer burn and old fryer oil. 1 part convenience store, 1 part greasy spoon. The regulars were men who either worked too late or drank too early. I'd been behind that counter for 7 months, enough time to know the regular order of the snowplow guys, enough time to carry a towel slung over one shoulder like I belonged there. Leon worked the fry station. He was an ex-truck driver who said almost nothing and did everything slow. He had a permanent coffee stain on his apron and eyes that said he'd seen enough of everything. We weren't friends exactly, but he'd watch the door when I took my break and once brought me half a grilled cheese when I skipped dinner. It was January 12th, a Thursday, edging into Friday, around 3:40 a.m. Outside, the snow fell soft, like it didn't want to land. It was the kind of night where the world felt muted, cold still, forgettable. I was wiping down the counter, humming without noticing, trying to stay awake. That's when the doorbell jingled and ruined everything. 3 men walked in, locals, loud, laughing the way drunk men do when they're already bored. I clocked them immediately, mid-40s, construction boots, cheeks red from the cold or the liquor. One was missing a glove, holding it like it was proof of a story he couldn't wait to tell. I knew the type. You don't get raised in Montana without learning to read drunk men like weather patterns. At first, it was just noise. They banged into the chairs, leaned on the counter, ordered food like they were doing us a favor. Mozzarella sticks, jalapeno poppers, 4 cheeseburgers, heavy on the sauce. I punched in the order, gave them the total, tried not to make eye contact. Then the smallest one, the one with the darkest eyes, leaned forward and said it. "You always this cute on night shift, or is it just the cold making you hard?" His friends laughed like he was a genius. I didn't. I just kept my hands busy, turned away, and told myself not to say anything smart. I'd learned the hard way that being clever doesn't end the game, it escalates it. But he didn't stop. "What's your name, sweetheart? You look like trouble." I kept my back to him. "Name tag's right there." He laughed. "I like him a little mouthy." And I told myself to breathe. Because I had 5 hours left on shift. Because I needed this job. Because Leon was 10 feet away and hadn't said a damn thing. There's always a moment where you know a night has taken a wrong turn. For me, it was when I brought the food out and he touched me. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't grab me hard or shout. He just reached across the counter and wrapped his fingers around my wrist. Just held it. For 1 second longer than a stranger should. Like he owned the air between us. "We could take this party back to the truck, yeah?" he said. "You look like you need the attention." I yanked my arm back. Not a scream, not even a slap. Just a stiff pull like a plug getting pulled from the wall. "Don't touch me," I said. Quiet, but clear. That was the switch. It always is. When you stop playing along, even by omission, something in men like him snaps into place. His eyes sharpened and the fake smile slipped. Now he wasn't performing for his friends. Now it was about putting me back in my place. He stood up. "You think you're better than us?" He spat. "You ain't nothing but a cashier in a rat hole." I took 1 step back, just enough to hit the soda machine behind me. His buddies weren't laughing anymore. They were watching, waiting, like this was a bar fight, and they were just waiting to see who threw the first punch. Then Leon finally stepped out from the back. He wasn't holding anything dangerous. Just the fry scoop, still warm like he hadn't even wiped his hands. He didn't look angry or afraid, just tired. "Time to leave, fellas," he said. "You got your food." The drunk guy smiled like Leon was a joke. "Chill, old man, we were just talking." But they moved, slowly, one after the other, still smiling, still letting their eyes do the work. They left, climbed into a rusted red pickup, and sat there with the engine running. I could feel them watching through the glass like they were wondering what else I'd do if they gave me just 1 more minute. Eventually, they drove off. Not fast. Just far enough to say they weren't done. Just busy. I didn't say anything for a long time after they left. I just stood at the register, staring at the grease stain on the counter where one of them had leaned. Leon went back into the kitchen without another word, like it was over, like nothing had happened. An hour passed before I finally asked, "Why didn't you say something sooner?" He looked up from a tray of fries and shrugged. Didn't want to make it worse. I wanted to scream. Not because he was wrong, but because he was probably right. That's the worst part. He wasn't afraid they'd hurt him. He was afraid they'd hurt me. and that saying something too soon would have flipped the script in a way we couldn't control. But silence makes it worse too. I didn't call the cops. What would I even say? That a guy made some comments, touched my wrist, and made me feel like I'd never want to work a night shift again? That's not a crime. That's just a woman's life. I went home at 7, like usual, sat on my bed fully clothed, holding my phone in both hands like maybe I'd report it anyway. I didn't. The next time I worked graveyard, I slipped a box cutter into my apron pocket. Not because I thought I'd use it, just because I wanted something metal and sharp between me and the next smile that turned sour. Nothing happened that shift, or the one after. But I started watching every man who walked through the door. I noticed how long they stayed, how close they stood, whether they looked at my face or just my body. I started checking the security camera more often, making sure it blinked like it was still recording. Leon never brought it up again. He went back to flipping patties and scooping fries, eyes half-lidded and shoulders slumped. I didn't blame him. This wasn't the kind of job where you start fights. It was the kind where you kept your head down and hoped nothing lit the match. I told myself I was fine. I even said it out loud once in the walk-in freezer, just to hear it bounce back at me. I'm fine. But I didn't sleep for 2 days. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw that man standing over me. Not shouting, not swinging, just watching. Calm, certain, like I owed him something I'd never offered. Working graveyard isn't just a job. It's a study in quiet violence, the kind that doesn't leave bruises, just memory. You start to carry yourself different. You lower your gaze when a group walks in. You learn to smile without meaning it, speak without tone, disappear without leaving. It's survival, not service. That night taught me a truth I wish I didn't have to learn. We're not paid to feel safe. We're paid to endure, to serve food with a smile even when someone's breathing down your neck, to pretend it's all harmless because the alternative might get you hurt, or worse, fired. People talk about danger like it's always obvious, like it kicks down the door. But sometimes it walks in slow, with heavy boots and a smirk. Sometimes it holds your wrist just long enough for you to memorize the temperature of its hand. I never saw those men again, but I never stopped looking for them. In every truck that idled too long, in every man who called me sweetheart and leaned too close, in every silence where a cook decided not to speak up. Because danger isn't always loud. Sometimes it's polite, patient, entitled. And the worst part? It doesn't want to hurt you. It wants you to flinch. Fear isn't always about what happened. It's about what could have. We're taught to smile, to stay calm, to not make it worse. But silence is its own kind of violence. Speak up when you can. Stand by someone if they need it. Because some people aren't just surviving their shift. They're surviving being seen. I used to think some places just stop existing once you've been away long enough. Like the past fades with distance. That was a lie I told myself a lot after Angie left. The truth is, places don't go anywhere. They wait, quiet and unchanged. And the second you walk back in, they remember you, even if you're trying to forget them. Sunny Mart was one of those places. A small-town convenience store off Maple Hollow Road with flickering lights, an ice machine that hadn't worked since I was in high school, and a red plastic bench outside that still had initials carved into the side. Mine and Angie's were in there somewhere too. Back when we thought forever was something we could afford. It was a Monday, just before 4 in the afternoon. The kind of spring day that still felt like winter was hanging on with both hands. Cold, gray sky, and the kind of wind that made your sleeves feel too thin. Tommy had been sick over the weekend. Nothing major, just a low fever and a cough that kept him up at night. I left work early from the shop, told them I had to pick up meds and groceries, and they didn't ask more. I was grateful for that. I didn't have the energy to explain that my son barely talked some days, and I wasn't sure if that was just his personality or if he was already carrying the weight of things no kid should. We pulled into the lot. The store looked smaller than I remembered. I checked Tommy's seatbelt out of habit before going in. He was curled up against the window, holding a tissue to his nose. He didn't ask to stay in the car, just followed me in like a shadow. The bell above the door jingled that high-pitched chime, and for a second everything in me tightened. It smelled like floor cleaner and old fryer grease, familiar and stale. Behind the counter stood Mrs. Brandt. She was thinner than I remembered. Her white apron looked too big on her frame. She glanced up and her eyes locked on mine. It wasn't a warm look. It was recognition laced with something else. Maybe disappointment, maybe grief. I gave her a small nod. "Afternoon." She didn't say a word. Tommy tugged on my sleeve as I passed the toy machine. His voice was barely there. "Can I try?" "Next time," I said gently. "We're just grabbing a few things, remember?" He nodded, but he didn't look me in the eye. He rarely did anymore. I grabbed a box of cereal, some tissues, and turned toward the dairy cooler. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate. Then a voice I hadn't heard in over a year. "You ever planning on fixing what you broke?" I turned and saw Reed standing near the coffee machine, Angie's older brother, built like a tree stump, tired eyes, that same sharpness in his jaw that said he hadn't let anything go. "She's not your problem anymore," I said, keeping my voice low. "She made her choices." "And you made yours too," he said, brushing past. He didn't look at me again, just walked down an aisle like he didn't just drop a cinder block into my chest. Tommy looked up at me, confused. Sometimes it's not the yelling that shakes you. It's the things said soft, said sure. Things that know where to land. I tried to act like nothing had happened. That's the thing about parenting. Sometimes you pretend for them even when your guts are crawling up into your throat. Tommy didn't say anything, but I knew he'd felt it. The tension, the hurt. We got to the counter. Mrs. Brandt rang everything up slowly, still avoiding my eyes. The scanner beeped over, and each sound felt like it echoed. She hadn't aged much since I was a teenager, but there was something in her face now. Something sad and permanent. "You look like your father did in his last year," she said finally. Quiet, like a memory leaking out. I blinked, surprised. "Excuse me?" "Carrying too much," she said, handing me the change. I nodded, unsure what to do with that. There was no small talk after that. No mention of how my mom used to buy scratch tickets here or how I used to leave with jawbreakers stuffed in my jacket pocket. Just silence. And wait. As I turned, Tommy tugged on my coat again. Was he mad because of Mom? I stopped walking. We were halfway to the door, and I could feel the air shift again. I bent down, met his eyes. "Sometimes people stay angry when they're hurting," I said, brushing his hair from his face. "Doesn't mean it's your fault." He didn't nod, just stared. That empty, heavy look I'd started seeing more and more. And it crushed me. Because he didn't understand why adults were like this. Why love could fall apart and people could vanish and the grown-ups he depended on couldn't always be strong. We walked out without saying goodbye. I don't think Mrs. Brandt even watched us go. The sky had darkened a little since we came in. Not quite evening yet, but the kind of dim that made everything look washed out. I buckled Tommy in and just sat for a second. Hands on the wheel, eyes on the mirror, watching the door behind us. Sometimes I felt like the only thing I did was try to keep the dam from breaking. Angie's absence still leaked into the cracks of every day. No fights, no drama, just a slow drift. One week she was going to meetings, the next she stopped texting back. The week after that her phone was disconnected, and then she was just gone. I started the car, pulled out slow. Tommy was quiet, as usual, but I could feel something in the air. He was thinking, turning things over the way kids do. Absorbing. We passed an old schoolyard where the jungle gym was rusting at the edges. He used to play there before everything changed. Now he didn't even look out the window. He finally spoke. "Do you think she misses us?" I didn't lie. Maybe. But what matters is, I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere. That got him. Not a smile, not yet, but a look. He reached out and grabbed my hand across the center console, held it. Just for a moment. And in that small second, I felt something shift back into place. That night, after I put Tommy to bed, I sat on the edge of the couch with a beer I didn't even want, just holding it. The house was silent except for the hum of the fridge and the ticking wall clock above the microwave. I thought about Reed, about Mrs. Brandt, about the way the world seems to have a file on you that you can't erase, full of every mistake, every missed opportunity. No matter how hard you try to move forward, someone will always be flipping back to the worst chapter. I didn't hate Reed for what he said. I understood it. Angie was his sister. He watched her crumble and probably blamed me for not catching her in time. Maybe he was right. Maybe I failed her. But what people like him never seem to get, I wasn't trying to win. I was just trying to raise a boy who wouldn't have to carry the same pain. That was the line I drew. Not to fix everything, just not to pass it down. A few days later, I took Tommy back to the same store. I let him try the toy machine this time. One of those plastic bubbles dropped, and inside was a cheap plastic dinosaur. He held it like it was treasure. Mrs. Brandt was quieter than before. But when we walked up, she looked Tommy in the eye and said, "You helping your dad today?" He nodded, just once. She looked at me, softer this time. "He's got your eyes." I didn't say anything, just paid in cash, thanked her, and we left. Some people change, others don't. But I realized something on the drive home. There are no big redemptions, no dramatic turnarounds, just little choices, quiet ones. And maybe those are the ones that really matter. The past can shape you, but it doesn't get to define who you are to the ones who need you now. Being present, even in your brokenness, can be more powerful than being perfect. The quiet strength of showing up day after day is what breaks the cycle. Night shifts settle into routines. The hum of the cooler, the rhythmic ding of the doorbell, the shuffle of tires in the parking lot. These are the heartbeat of Beck's Corner Store. I've manned this cash register for nearly 3 years, starting as a part-time job after college. Soon enough, it became full-time. Quiet pay, no surprises. You greet the regulars, smile politely, ring up their items, nod at small talk, and that's it until morning. Mrs. Sylvia Archer is part of that rhythm. Every Wednesday at exactly 6:45 p.m., she slips in the front door, slim in her faded windbreaker, clutching a reusable tote. I remember her from town, once the lunch lady at the elementary school, now retired. She buys the same things: a loaf of bread, a can of chicken noodle soup, a 2-liter generic lemon soda, and $1 scratch-off ticket. She pays in exact change, counting coins carefully. She tells me, Riley, can't afford plastic play, and flashes a faint grin. But it's more than money. She's proud, independent. I see her slowly dropping each coin into my palm, the shake of her fingers betraying her fatigue. One typical Wednesday meets Tuesday's restocking. I finish organizing the candy racks around 6:30. Around 6:43, snow starts slipping under the door. By 6:47, the door jingles. In walks Sylvia. Same jacket, slower steps. I raise my eyebrow. "Hey, Mrs. Archer, everything all right?" She pats her side. "Just a pinch, dear. Soup for dinner tonight, the soda can wait." She presses coins, no ticket this time. Something's off. Her face is paler than usual, but she leaves with her usual grace. Moments later, I spot her at the gum rack, Trident Spearmint. She slides an unmarked envelope behind the row, then exits. The door clicks shut. I hesitate. I watch her leave. I walk over. No stamp, no name. I take it to the counter, peel it open. 3 $20 bills and a note scrawled on the back of a drugstore receipt. For whoever needs it next. Please let it stay quiet. Don't thank me. I've had help before. Time to return the favor. I sit there, reading it under fluorescent light. My chest tightens. She didn't need a receipt. She didn't need recognition. Just a chance to give. But why now? Why 320s? Help before. Did she skip her meds? Cut back on food? Sold something she loved? She was still struggling hard, but still giving more than she had. I tuck the envelope into my apron pocket and take a deep breath. Wednesday nights at Beck's just got a little more complicated. That Saturday around 2:15 p.m., a young man, probably 19, staggers in. He looks exhausted, wearing worn jeans and a faded hoodie. No jacket. His hair's damp, maybe from sweat, maybe from snow melting. He grabs a pack of diapers and baby wipes. He stands ahead of me in line, thumbs twisting his broken debit card. He bites his lip, tries to swipe it, swipes it again, and the machine beeps, declined. He glances at me. I nod. I know what to do. I resist the urge to ask questions. He looks up, broken, embarrassed, in need. I slip the envelope out of my apron pocket and hand it to him under the counter, like passing a baton or a secret gift. He freezes, eyes filling. He mumbles, I'll pay you back. Next week, maybe. I shake my head. No names, no thanks. Just take care of yourself and that baby. He swallows hard and nods, horrified and relieved. Tears begin to slip. He leaves slowly, clutching the diapers, tears glinting in his eyes. The register feels colder after that. I don't even close my eyes. Just stand there absorbing the moment. Later, I glance at the gum rack. It's still obvious. Behind the trident row lies an envelope, now empty. I hope Sylvia sees that. Maybe she needed to know the gift reached someone. That night, I can't sleep. I keep thinking of Sylvia in her windbreaker, those trembling coins, and the courage it took to pay it forward. She's lived long enough to need help more than once. To say thank you quietly and give again, that kind of grace sticks in your head. By Wednesday evening, I brace for her arrival. The snow is thicker now. Wind rattles the door. I restock the gum racks faster than usual, ready but anxious. She appears at 6:45. The same posture, same stooped walk, same plastic tote. She buys only bread and soup again. No soda, still skipping it, no ticket. I ring up the items with her usual smile. She tosses coins across the counter and pauses. She meets my eyes. I quickly look away. She slips the envelope again. No flash, no show, and walks out. My throat tightens. The quiet generosity. The steady cost of understanding that so many carry inside. Over the next few weeks, I keep finding envelopes. A few dollars, a few 20s, occasionally a note. Always anonymous. Always behind the gum rack. One night, a mother with 3 kids picks up soup and milk, hesitates at the register. The eldest clutches a coin. She looks at the exact price, looks at me. I feel the wave of recognition. Another need. I take an envelope. The kids' eyes widen, they smile. Another night, a struggling artist buys watercolor paints on layaway. I hand her what she needs. She weeps quietly in the car bay. Sylvia's simple habit has become a lifeline. A secret flowing through small hands and broken coins. And every time I slip the money, I feel a little less alone myself. Nearly a year has passed. Beck's still hums. The gum rack still sagging. Sylvia still arrives, stooped and soft in her windbreaker, but I've stopped counting her coins. I trust her now. One evening, she lingers. She taps the counter gently, and I notice her hand trembling more than usual. She speaks quietly. Jordan, thank you. I freeze. I don't ask you to say it, she says. Just, thank you. You've kept it quiet. That matters. She gives me a half smile. I nod, tighten my chest. She leaves and the door closes behind her louder than it should. I stand there with the register ringing down, hearing everything. In that moment, Beck's isn't just a store. It's a quiet shelter. A place where gentle hearts give what little they have. A place where someone like me, a cashier, can become something bigger, a keeper of hope. True generosity isn't noisy. It doesn't seek attention or praise. Sometimes it looks like a $60 gift hidden behind gum or a quiet exchange between broken people. The greatest shelters are made of small kindnesses that say you matter, even when no one's watching. There are some people you grow up with who never quite leave your life, even when they drift so far you can barely see the shoreline anymore. Kyle was that for me. We were never a couple, though some people assumed we were or maybe thought we should have been. But we had that strange kind of closeness built from years of sitting through each other's worst moments. Breakups, funerals. That time I had a full-blown panic attack at graduation, and he was the only one who didn't try to fix it, just sat with me until my breathing came back. Lately, though, I felt like I was losing him. Since August, he'd pulled back. His mom's dementia diagnosis hit him harder than he let on, even though he always tried to brush it off. "She's just getting forgetful," he said at first. But forgetful turned into confused, and confused turned into wandering the backyard in slippers at 3 a.m., asking where her brother was. Her brother had been dead for 9 years. I hadn't seen Kyle in almost 2 weeks when he texted me. Not even a hey, just, "You going to the store tonight?" It was a weird question, and I almost ignored it, but something in me wouldn't let it go. I said yes, even though I wasn't planning on it. I got in the car, put on my coat even though it wasn't that cold, and drove to Clover Stop Go, the corner store tucked near the edge of Willow Bend. The kind of place that still had a rack of VHS tapes in the back and a bulletin board covered in yellowing flyers. He was already there when I pulled up, sitting on the bench out front, hoodie up, hunched forward like he was trying to fold in on himself. Earbuds in, but no music playing. I knew that look. I'd worn it before. "You all right?" I asked, walking up slowly. He nodded without looking at me, then stood up and mumbled, "Let's go in." No smile, no small talk. We walked into the store together and it felt like stepping back into college. Same cheap fluorescent lights, same squeaky floor tiles, same overhead pop music station that somehow always played the same 5 songs. Kyle made a slow loop, picking up a bottle of Coke, 2 protein bars, and a pack of instant noodles. His usual. He didn't say much, didn't look at me. I didn't press him. At the register, the new kid, Travis, tried to make small talk. "Cold out today, huh?" "Yeah," Kyle said flatly. No eye contact, just handed over a $10 bill and waited. Travis gave him exact change. Kyle stared at it for a second, then said, "Keep it," and walked off. Kyle never did that. He'd once driven back to a coffee shop over a 50-cent mistake. That's when I knew something wasn't just off. Something was wrong. Outside, under the dull parking lot lights, I looked over at him. "You sure you're okay?" He glanced at me, and I saw something in his face that scared me more than anything he could have said. "You know when you wake up," he said, "and for a second, everything's okay. Then it all rushes back like a flood, and you're underwater before your feet hit the floor?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah. I'm not trying to scare anyone," he said, "but I think I'm slipping. I wanted to fix it. That's the thing I hate about being a caretaker by nature. Your first instinct is to do. Offer a plan, suggest a therapist, recommend a podcast or book or breathing exercise. But none of that felt right. Not with Kyle, not in that moment. So we just sat. The bench outside Clover Stop Go creaked beneath us. It always did. It had probably been repaired a dozen times by now, but the wood still groaned like it had stories to tell. I sat with my hands tucked between my knees. Kyle sat with his elbows on his thighs, shoulders hunched, head down. The silence between us was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that comes when 2 people stop pretending. After a while, he said, "I came here last week alone. Same time, same bench." I turned to look at him, but he was staring out across the parking lot. "I stood in that aisle by the back fridge," he went on, "if I stopped showing up. And I thought, Maybe no one would notice. My heart lodged itself somewhere in my throat. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to say the wrong thing. So I said the truth. I would. He nodded, like he already knew. That's why I texted. It was such a simple sentence, but it broke something open in me. Because people talk about reaching out like it's this easy, noble thing, like it's just a matter of texting someone. But when you're in that place, when your brain convinces you that you're invisible, or worse, a burden, reaching out feels like lifting a car off your own chest. And he did it anyway. We sat there until the cold got to us. The wind picked up around 7 p.m., and he rubbed his hands together without saying much else. I didn't ask him to elaborate. I didn't need to. I dropped him off at his place a few minutes later. He gave me the kind of nod that said, "Thank you," without saying anything. I watched him walk up the porch steps and disappear into the house he grew up in. A house now full of shadows and ticking clocks and a mother who sometimes didn't recognize her own son. I cried in my car for a few minutes before driving home. Not because I was scared, but because I'd been there too. The next few days were quiet. I didn't hear from Kyle again until Friday. He sent me a photo, just a plate of scrambled eggs with a thumbs up emoji. I stared at it for longer than I should have. It didn't mean much on the surface, but underneath I knew what it meant. He'd gotten out of bed. He'd made food. He'd stayed. The following Sunday we met at the store again. Same bench. This time he was already inside when I pulled up. I found him in the snack aisle holding a pack of trail mix like it was a life raft. "Hey," I said. "Hey," he echoed, a little more color in his voice. He walked the aisles with more presence. Travis smiled at him at the counter and Kyle actually smiled back. I bought gum I didn't need just to hang around a little longer. Outside, he leaned on the bench and looked up at the sky. "Local guy, does weekend hours?" I called someone, a counselor. "That's great," I said, not too cheerfully. I didn't want to overwhelm him with praise, just enough to say, "I see you. That matters." "I don't know if it'll work," he added, "but I figured I should try something before I stop trying." That hit hard, but it also felt like light was getting in. I started picking him up on Saturdays after that. Not every week, but most. He didn't like to drive after bad nights and his mom's condition was slipping further. She once asked him if he was the paper boy. He laughed, but I could see it cracked him a little more each time. One Saturday after his appointment, he asked if we could swing by Clover Stop Go. I blinked. "You hungry?" He shook his head. "No, just feels like the last place I still recognize." So we went. Bought a Gatorade and a pack of gum. Talked to Travis, who'd finally learned our names. Kyle told him about a new song he was working on. I hadn't seen him bring up music in months. That night I dropped him off again. But before he got out, he paused. "Do you ever feel like you don't belong in your own life?" I thought about it. "Yeah, all the time." He nodded. "Doesn't feel so bad when someone else says it too." I kept every text he sent after that. They weren't long. Sometimes just a thumbs up. Sometimes a picture of his mom's old recipe cards or a chord chart he was messing with. But they were there. A few months later, I sat in the back of a small coffee house while he played guitar for the first time in almost a year. His voice cracked a little on the second verse. I cried anyway. We still go to the store sometimes. Still sit on the bench when it's warm enough. Not because we need anything, but because it reminds us of that night. The night he was just quiet. The night that could have been the end of something, and instead became the beginning of holding on. Sometimes, the loudest cry for help is silent, and the most powerful thing you can do isn't giving advice or fixing someone. It's showing up, sitting beside them, letting them know they're not alone in their darkness, because sometimes just staying is what saves a life. I didn't plan to be in Tallahassee that long. After my dad passed from a stroke, everything I thought I was building, college, career, some version of a future, just stopped making sense. I left during the middle of my junior year, packed a single duffel bag. No grand plan. I couldn't even remember the last thing I'd cared about. Marcus, my cousin, said I could crash at his place. A tiny one-bedroom off Marston Avenue with a stained couch, 2 working lamps, and exactly 1 fork. Marcus was the kind of guy who had good intentions and bad follow-through. Friendly, messy, broke. But he didn't ask questions. I needed that. I took the first job I could find. Ridgeway Quick Stop, a corner store with flickering lights, dusty floors, and an AC unit that made more noise than cold air. It wasn't terrible. It gave me something to do besides scroll my phone and think about everything I wasn't doing with my life. Most nights were quiet. Locals buying smokes or cold beer. A couple regulars came in so often I knew their favorite scratch-offs by heart. And me, I kept my head down, restocked the shelves, scanned items, handed out change, and didn't talk much. But that night, August 18th, 2017, the quiet broke. It was muggy. The air inside the store felt thick. I was halfway through reorganizing the gum rack when the bell above the door chimed. A woman walked in first. Green hoodie, hood up, head down. She moved slow like someone trying to make herself invisible. Behind her came a man. Shirtless, loud, the kind of guy who wears aggression like cologne, strong enough for everyone to smell it. He was teasing her, but not in a funny way. "You always gotta act brand new in public, huh?" She didn't answer, didn't look at him, just grabbed a water bottle from the fridge and walked to the counter. He followed. I stood behind the register straightening a stack of bills, trying to look busy. The man leaned on the counter and grinned at me. "You ever get tired of pretending, man?" "Pretending what?" I asked. "Like you don't see it." Before I could answer, he swung the water bottle. It hit her in the face with a sickening sound, part slap, part thud. She stumbled. Blood trickled from her nose. "That's what you get," he hissed. "Always trying to make me look stupid." I didn't move, not out of fear. Not exactly. It was something deeper. A freeze I didn't understand. He stood there for a second, breathing heavy. Then he stormed out, the door slamming behind him. And just like that, he was gone. She stood there, hand to her face, breathing through her mouth, blood on her lip. Her eyes were still blank. Like her body knew it was hurt, but her mind hadn't caught up yet. "Do you want me to call someone?" I asked. She shook her head. "An ambulance?" "No." Her voice was soft, cracked like she hadn't spoken all day. "He's just drunk," she said. "He gets like this." She was still protecting him. Standing there with blood in her hand, she was defending the man who just hurt her in front of a stranger. I said, "Please, let me at least get you some ice." "No, don't make it worse." She looked at me like I didn't get it, and maybe I didn't. She grabbed the water bottle, the same one that hit her, and walked out. The bell above the door jingled like nothing had happened. Later that night, I told Marcus. We were sitting on his porch, both of us half listening to some old hip-hop track he had playing from his phone. He shook his head, sighed. "Not our place, man." "But she needed help." "Yeah," he said. "It is. But she didn't ask for it. You try to step in, you make things worse. That's how that didn't sit right with me. But I didn't argue. Because I didn't have a better answer. I thought about that hit, the sound of it, the way she didn't even cry, the way she walked out like it had happened before. And I realized something awful. She expected it. She came back 2 weeks later. Same hoodie. This time with sunglasses on, even though it was past 9. I was behind the counter, pretending not to notice. Her lip was bruised. She bought a pack of gum and a lighter. Didn't say anything. I wanted to ask if she was okay. I didn't. Because part of me was still frozen. Part of me thought, maybe Marcus was right. But the rest of me knew better. Now it's years later. I moved on. New city, new job. Some days are better. Some nights still feel heavy. But I watch people more now. I notice things I used to miss. How a woman flinches when her boyfriend laughs too loud. How someone reaches for a bottle with a shaking hand. How often people try to disappear in plain sight. I still think about Rosa. I think about what I could have done differently. Not to be a hero, but maybe just human. Some people live through pain so familiar it stops looking like danger. And the rest of us? We learn to look away. But silence has a cost. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to fight everyone. But when you see something, really see it. Don't pretend you didn't. Even small compassion matters. Even quiet courage counts. When people ask what grief feels like, I tell them it's not one big wave. It's the slow drip of silence. It's not the crash. It's what comes after. The rooms that stay quiet. The shoes by the door that no one moves. The spoon you still set for someone who isn't coming home. After Jamie died, I came back to Willowford because I didn't know where else to go. My parents still lived here. They said it would be good for me to be near familiar places. But familiar didn't mean comforting. It just meant more shadows. I started working nights at DeWitt's Corner Market that spring. By October, I could almost fake feeling normal. Night shifts helped. Few customers, no social pressure, just the soft hum of fridges and the rustle of snack bags. That's when I noticed him. Always 8:15. Like clockwork. Tall, gaunt man in an old army jacket with frayed cuffs and a faded flag patch. Quiet eyes. Not cold, but heavy. He always bought 3 things: a gas station bouquet wrapped in that weird green tissue, a single banana, and a hot black coffee. Never spoke unless I greeted him. The first few nights, I thought nothing of it. People are creatures of habit. But then I started catching it. He lingered, pretended to browse near the gum rack, stood too long near the door after buying his items. I don't scare easy. But I notice things. That's something grief sharpens in you. Awareness. One night I asked, "Rough day?" He looked startled, then paused, too long. His voice was low when he answered. "I used to come here with her. She liked the daisies." He didn't say who her was. I didn't ask. He walked out, coffee untouched. The next night he came again. Same time, same items. Except this time, he brought something else. A silver locket. He laid it gently on the counter beside the banana. "I think you remind me of her," he said. I tried to hand it back. "I can't take this." But he didn't argue, just nodded slowly and walked out. And that was when my stomach twisted a little, because I saw something in his eyes I knew too well. Loss. But loss without anchors? That's where it gets dangerous. The locket sat behind the counter for days. I didn't touch it again. I wasn't sure what to do with it. There was no name inside, no photo, no inscription. Just a hollow silver shell. Something meant to carry memory. Then he started calling. The store line barely rings, so when it rang at 7:55 one night, I picked up out of habit. "DeWitt's, this is Maya." Click. I checked the time. 8:15 came and there he was. Same jacket, same coffee, same bouquet. The next night it happened again. Call. Silence. Then his arrival. I mentioned it to my manager. He shrugged. "Come from something hard. Probably just lonely. Harmless. Guys like that, I wanted to believe that. But then came the note. After closing one night, I walked to my car. Wind was kicking leaves down Pinecrest like angry birds. I noticed something on my windshield. A yellow sticky note. "You shouldn't have to be alone. I know what it feels like." No name, no signature. I stood in the cold parking lot staring at it for a long time. I knew it was him. There was no one else. No one else who lingered. No one else who stared. I told my manager again. He just rubbed his jaw. Vet with a story, maybe. Can't blame a guy for hurting. But I wasn't sure that's what this was anymore. A week before Halloween, he brought the photo. Framed, simple, wooden edges. He laid it on the counter the way someone might place a prayer. "This is her," he said. The woman in the photo looked young, barely out of college. Brown hair pulled back, standing in front of DeWitt's, smiling big, holding a drink. And yes, she looked a little like me. Not identical, but close enough that something cold slithered down my back. She loved this place, and he said. She used to talk to everyone. I asked carefully, what happened to her? His eyes darkened. She's gone. A year ago, November 3rd, 2 weeks away. I wrote the date down in my head even though I didn't want to remember it. He didn't say much else. Just stood there for a while like he was waiting for something, then left. And I stood behind the counter, heart knocking against my ribs. I stopped wearing my hair the same way. Switched to side braids. I stopped wearing the red scarf I liked, because the girl in the photo wore one too. It's hard to explain what it feels like to be looked at like a memory instead of a person. He came every night after that, never missed. He watched me. Sometimes didn't buy anything. Just walked in, stood near the counter, left. On November 3rd, he came in at 8:15. This time he held nothing. No coffee, no banana, just his hands in his coat pockets. He walked straight to the counter and looked at me. She would have been 32 today. I froze. My hands trembled slightly as I straightened a rack of Tic Tacs just to stay busy. He smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile, it was like something closing, like he had made a decision. He leaned in and whispered, "You make it easier. You really do." That night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't eat. I left the porch light on. Checked all the locks twice. The next day I called in. Told my manager I needed to switch shifts. That night, I didn't go in. And I hoped, I prayed, he'd forget me. The morning after, my manager called. His voice was flat, tight. I could hear the click of the register in the background. He came in last night, asked for you. When I said you weren't on, he just stood there for 10 seconds, then dropped a box on the counter. What was in it, I asked. A pause. The locket, the photo, a bouquet, and a note. She's with me now. I won't need these anymore. I didn't cry. Not then. But something inside me sank. A part of me that still wanted to believe this was just grief, that he was just lost and lonely. But no, this wasn't mourning. This was replacement. Projection. A man so broken he found another version of someone he lost and decided that was enough. I never saw him again. I don't know where he went or what that note really meant, but I don't work nights now. I take different roads. I keep pepper spray in my purse. I lock my car before I start it. I leave lights on when I sleep. Because sometimes the scariest people aren't evil. They're convinced they've found love again. And they'll keep coming back until reality finally shuts the door. Grief deserves compassion, but it doesn't excuse boundary crossing. Love remembered is sacred, but love imagined onto someone else can turn dangerous. It's okay to mourn, but healing means facing the loss, not rewriting it. And for the rest of us, it's okay to say, I see your pain, but I still need to protect myself. The truth is, I didn't move to Bentonville for a fresh start. I moved because I didn't know where else to go. After the divorce, my world shrank. My ex kept the house, the friends, the routine. I kept the laptop, the cat, and a lingering sense of failure. I found a small upstairs rental on Oakview Court, just a block from Evergreen Food Mart. It was nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, drafty windows, and water pressure that came and went like moods. But it was quiet, and I needed quiet. I worked remotely as a copy editor, spending long hours in sweatpants and silence. My evenings became ritualistic. Log off, grab my tote, and walk the 1 block down to the store. I'd buy a frozen dinner, maybe some soda, and take the long way home just to stretch my legs. It was during one of those walks that I first noticed the red Civic. It was parked in the corner of the store's lot. Clean, nothing flashy, just red paint and tinted windows. At first, I didn't think twice. Cars park, cars leave. But it was there again the next evening. This time, pulled in backward, facing the doors. Still no one inside that I could see. By the third or fourth night, something about it started to get under my skin. It was always in a different spot. Close to the entrance one evening, tucked near the dumpster the next. I didn't see anyone get out. I didn't see anyone return. Just that same car, same windows, same quiet presence. I started glancing at it before I entered the store, just long enough to check if I could make out a face. I never could, but I felt it. Someone watching, and I told myself I was being paranoid. I was alone, adjusting to a new life, projecting shadows into corners where none existed. That's what I wanted to believe. But the car kept showing up, and soon, it wasn't just in the parking lot. It was a Thursday when I saw the Civic parked in the alley between my building and the store. That narrow strip barely fit trash bins and delivery trucks. Yet there it was, wedged against the side of my building, angled like it didn't care about scratches. I paused halfway up the sidewalk, groceries in hand, heart thudding. I didn't want to pass it, but there was no other route home. I walked quickly, hugging my bag like it could protect me. When I reached my door, I locked it twice and sat down on the couch, shoes still on. Later, I brought it up with Damon, the cashier at Evergreen. He was a teenager, probably in high school, always sipping from a monster-sized soda and scrolling through his phone. When I asked if he knew who drove the red Civic, he shrugged. "Maybe the guy across the street," he said. "Dunno. Looks like a lot of folks around here." That night, I tried to forget, but around 10, while heating leftover pasta, I heard the soft crunch of gravel outside my kitchen window. I froze. I turned off the stove and crept to the blinds, lifting them half an inch. The alley was empty. No lights, no car. Still, I stood there for nearly 20 minutes, listening, waiting. Nothing. But I stopped feeling safe after that. 2 days passed before I worked up the courage to go back to Evergreen. I told myself it was over. Maybe whoever drove the Civic had just moved on. Maybe I'd made it all up. But as I rounded the corner, my stomach dropped. The car was there again, not parked this time. Idling. Engine on, low hum vibrating against the night. It sat near the edge of the lot, facing away from the store. I walked inside, hands cold, trying to keep my expression normal. Damon gave a small wave. I nodded back and grabbed a few things: coffee, oat milk, cereal. I kept one eye on the glass doors the entire time. When I stepped out with my bag, the headlights flashed. Twice. I froze. My throat tightened. No one stepped out of the car, no window rolled down. Just 2 blinks and silence. I turned sharply and headed away from my apartment. I walked toward Main Street instead, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I took the long route home, doubling back through 2 neighborhoods. I made sure I wasn't being followed. I didn't go inside right away. I waited on the porch, keys ready, hand on my phone. The car was gone by the time I got back. But that night, as I turned down the sheets, there was a knock on my door. Just one, soft, and then nothing. I didn't open the door. I just stood there in the dark, pulse thudding in my ears, staring at the doorknob like it might start turning. After a minute, I slid down to the floor, back pressed to the wood, and waited. Who knocks once? Who doesn't knock again? I waited 30 minutes before moving. The next morning, I walked straight to Evergreen and asked Damon if the cameras reached the parking lot. He gave me a sheepish look. "They're broken. Manager keeps saying we'll get them fixed." Of course they were. I started skipping evening trips. Groceries came from delivery apps. I didn't want to explain why. What would I say? That I was scared of a car? That I hadn't seen a face, heard a voice, or caught a plate number? That I had no proof? I changed my habits. Kept lights on. Checked the locks 3 times before bed. My friends back in Little Rock would have told me I was overreacting. But they hadn't heard that knock. And they hadn't seen those headlights. The red Civic never returned to the store lot. But sometimes as I walk through the back lot behind my building or take out trash near dusk, I see it. Or I think I see it. A flash of red, a shape turning a corner, the hum of a muffler as a car slows by the curb, then drives off. I don't know if it's him. I don't know if he's still looking for me, or if he was ever really looking at all. What I do know is that the fear hasn't left. It lives in the quiet places, in the soft creak of stairs, in headlights sweeping across my window, in the pause before I open the door at night. Nothing ever really happened. No police report, no confrontation, no evidence. But I don't walk to the store after dark. I don't leave my windows open. I don't assume I'm safe just because it's a small town, because it's not always what happens that changes you. Sometimes it's what almost did. Listen to your instincts, even when they whisper. You don't owe anyone the benefit of the doubt when your gut is screaming no. Fear, when grounded, is a kind of wisdom. Sometimes survival isn't about what you do. It's about what you don't ignore.